Ever hear of a day when the shadows just stopped? Well, pull up a chair and let me tell you about the time the sun got stuck over the town of Three Brothers. It all began on a Tuesday. The sun came up, just like it always does, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Down in the town square, folks started noticing that their shadows weren't behaving. Instead of shrinking and moving as the sun climbed higher, every single shadow, from the church steeple to the stray cat slinking by the saloon, stayed frozen, stretched out long and thin, pointing directly west toward the Three Brothers Peaks. By 10 o'clock, the town was in a quiet panic. Clocks ticked on, but time itself seemed to have fractured. The shadows were stuck, as if the mountains had taken a deep breath and were inhaling all the light from the county. Old Man Hemlock swore he saw the shadow of his own hatchet refuse to budge, even as he lifted it to chop wood. Kids tried to play shadow tag, but the game was impossible. Their shadows were glued to the ground, pointing west, always west. The whisper started then. Some said it was a bad omen. Others claimed the mountains themselves were angry, holding the daylight hostage. Just when the fear was about to boil over, old Tom Brown stepped out onto his porch. Tom was a man who understood the earth, a man whose hands were as calloused and steady as the ancient stones he farmed around. He looked up at the peaks, then down at his own stubborn shadow, and just nodded. He didn't say a word. He just started walking, his dog Sugar trotting right along beside him, her bright blue eyes scanning everything. Tom walked straight out of town and up the winding trail to the base of the tallest peak, the one they called the Patriarch. When he got there, he didn't perform some grand ritual. He just placed his hand flat against the cool granite face of the mountain. He leaned in, giving it a friendly but firm pat, a solid, grounding nudge that you could feel all the way down in your bones. It was like he was waking up a sleeping giant. A low rumble echoed through the valley, and the whole ridge seemed to shiver, just for a second. The shadows didn't move yet, but something had shifted. The air felt lighter. Back in town, another legend was handling things his own way. Doc Holliday, leaning against a post on the general store's porch, wasn't looking at the mountain. He was looking at the sun. He tipped his hat low, squinting at the blinding orb. A crowd had gathered, watching him, waiting. They expected him to draw his six-shooter, maybe fire a warning shot at the sky. But Doc didn't reach for his gun. He reached into his coat and pulled out a worn deck of cards. He fanned them out, his fingers moving with practiced grace. "The mountain's bluffing," he announced to the nervous onlookers, his voice calm and steady. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a single card, the ace of spades, spinning high into the air. It caught the sunlight, flashing like a shard of a broken mirror. For a split second, it created a new brilliant reflection that seemed to reset the very angle of the light. It wasn't magic, not really. It was precision. It was about knowing just how to trick the light, how to break the stalemate. But the real secret, the deep magic of the hills, belonged to Rosemary. She ran the apothecary, and she knew the land wasn't angry. It was just congested. "The spirit flues are blocked," she declared, taking a long swig of cold water straight from the spring-fed well behind her shop. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, took a deep breath, and let out a whistle. It wasn't a tune you'd hear in any dance hall. It was a sharp, clear, ancient Ozark melody that seemed to cut right through the stillness. And that's what did it. The moment her whistle pierced the air, the shadows snapped. It was like 1,000 rubber bands being released at once. They scurried and zipped back to the feet of the people and things they belonged to, finally behaving as shadows should. A collective sigh of relief washed over the town. The sun was still the sun, the mountains were still the mountains, and the shadows were finally back to doing their dance. Through it all, Tom's little dog Sugar never left his side. Perched on his shoulder as he walked back into town, she was the only one who saw the real culprit. Tucked behind the grain scales at the mill, she spotted a tiny mountain sprite, a mischievous little creature no bigger than a thumb, clutching a stolen sliver of darkness. The sprite had been the one causing all the trouble, but when it saw Sugar's sharp, blue-eyed glare, it yelped, dropped the shadow, and scurried back into the hills, never to be seen again. And that's the story of how the town of Three Brothers got its shadows back. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow for more tales from the forgotten corners of the world.